You're paying tonight. You're the successful one, my mom said as the waiter dropped the $1,950 bill on the table. My sister's husband whispered something that made me angry. Okay, so here's a fun little fact about me. The moment I started earning good money, I stopped being a daughter and became a credit card. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that just the warmest family story you've ever heard? Stick around because it gets so much better. My name is Jolene. I'm 34, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I work as a senior procurement manager for a logistics company. Sounds boring, right? It's actually not, but that's not the point. The point is I make good money now. The kind of money that makes your family look at you differently. And not in the proud way. In the, oh good, she can cover this way. But nobody in my family remembers how I got here. Nobody remembers me sorting shipping labels in a warehouse for $11 an hour. Nobody remembers me eating ramen 5 nights a week or taking night classes while working 2 jobs. And they definitely don't remember the 6 weeks I slept in my car in 2016 because I couldn't make rent. That Jolene doesn't exist to them. The only Jolene they know is the one with the good paycheck and the open wallet. And the worst part? I let it happen. For years. But I'll get to that. My dad, Russell, is 61. Retired from a paper mill a few years back. He's not a bad man, I want to be clear about that. He's just from a generation where if you do well, you provide for everyone else. And if you complain, you're ungrateful. Simple as that. My sister Priscilla is 37. She married a guy named Douglas, and listen, how do I put this nicely? Douglas is the kind of man who always has opinions about money but never has any of his own. He's been between projects for about a decade. But somehow he drives a truck too big for his driveway and always orders the most expensive thing on the menu. You know the type? Please tell me you know the type. They have 2 kids, Harper 8 and Wyatt 5. I love those kids to death, and honestly that's part of how this whole mess got so tangled. Every time I wanted to say no to Priscilla and Douglas, I'd think about those kids. And my family knew that. My mom passed when I was 22. Cancer. I'm not going to dwell on it because I still can't talk about her long without falling apart. But when she was alive there was balance. She was the referee. After she died, my dad checked out emotionally, and by the time he came back around the family dynamics had already shifted. Priscilla became the squeaky wheel. I became the oil. It started small. Priscilla needed help with an electric bill. A couple $100. Then Douglas's truck needed repairs. Then Harper needed braces. Then rent. Then Christmas gifts because they couldn't afford presents for the kids. And what was I supposed to do? Let my niece and nephew wake up Christmas morning to nothing? What would you have done? Honestly? But here's what nobody tells you about being the generous one. Once you start, people stop seeing it as generosity. They see it as your job. And the thank yous get shorter. Then they just stop. By the time we get to the dinner I'm about to tell you about, I had given my family roughly $47,000 over 5 years. I know because I went through my bank statements one night. $47,000. That's a down payment on a house. Gone. And I wasn't even in great shape myself. I'd had some medical bills that year, my car needed work, and I was still trying to recover from a $3,000 loan to Priscilla and Douglas that spring. Spoiler, they never paid it back. Bigger spoiler, I never expected them to, and isn't that the saddest part? So, the dinner. My dad calls me midweek and says let's do a family dinner Saturday somewhere nice. And I thought okay, that sounds lovely. I missed them. Because that's the cruel joke about family. The people who hurt you most are still the people you want to sit across from. Dad picked a steakhouse downtown called Monarch. If you know Charlotte and you know Monarch, you already know where this is going. White tablecloths, $40 steaks, wine list that reads like a mortgage. I checked the menu online and figured okay, I'll order something reasonable, it'll be fine. What I didn't know was that Dad also invited my Uncle Keith, his wife Aunt Luann, my cousin Brantley, and Brantley's girlfriend Tiffany, with an I, who I'd never met and who ordered a cocktail before she even sat down. So suddenly this wasn't a small family dinner. This was a party of 9 at the most expensive restaurant in Uptown. Nobody told me. I walked in expecting 5 adults and 2 kids. Instead there's a long table near the back, everyone already drinking and laughing, and my dad stands up, spreads his arms and goes, there she is. The career woman. Not, there's my daughter. Not, there's Jolene. The career woman. Like that's my whole identity now. And I smiled. Because what else do you do? Then I watched. Literally watched in real time, as everyone ordered like they were spending someone else's money. Because they were. Douglas got the $46 ribeye plus lobster mac. Priscilla ordered a $65 seafood tower for the table without looking at me. Uncle Keith got a $120 bottle of wine. Tiffany with an I got the Chilean sea base. Dad got surf and turf. I ordered a Caesar salad and water. Are you already guessing what happened next? I bet you are. The dinner was actually nice, which makes it sting worse. Harper showed me a drawing from school. Wyatt told me a joke that made no sense but was adorable. Dad told old stories. For 2 hours I remembered why I loved these people. Then the check came. The waiter set that little black folder in the center of the table and for 3 seconds nobody moved. You know that moment? Where everyone suddenly becomes very interested in their napkin. Yeah. That. Then my dad picked up the check, looked at it and slid it directly across the table to me. And he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're paying tonight, you're the successful one." Ann Douglas, who still owed me $3,000, who just ate $46 of ribeye plus lobster, leaned over with this grin and whispered, "Guess we brought the family wallet." The whole table laughed. Every single one of them. My dad, my sister, my uncle, my aunt. Even Tiffany with an eye who I'd known for 90 minutes. Something broke in me. Right there in that restaurant. I felt my face get hot, my hands shaking under the table. I looked at that check, $1,950 before tip. And I thought about every late night, every sacrifice, every dollar I'd sent to people who never once asked how I was doing. I picked up the check, looked at it for about 5 seconds, put it back in the center of the table and said calmly and clearly, "I'm not paying for this. Not tonight. Not anymore." Dead silence. My dad's smile froze. Priscilla looked at Douglas. Douglas looked at his plate. Uncle Keith suddenly got real interested in his empty wine glass. "Do you think I did the right thing?" Because in that moment I wasn't even sure. All I knew was I couldn't do it one more time. And what happened after that, what my father said to me in the parking lot, that changed everything between us. I'm talking a full family earthquake. And the aftershocks lasted months. I'll tell you exactly what happened. Because it only got wilder from there. So where was I? Right. Me sitting in Monarch Steakhouse, heart pounding out of my chest, a nearly $2,000 check sitting in the middle of the table, and my entire family staring at me like I just flipped the table over. Nobody said a word for what felt like an hour. It was probably 10 seconds, but honestly it could have been 10 years. And then my dad did what my dad always does when he's embarrassed in public. He laughed. But not a real laugh. That tight, awkward laugh people do when they're trying to make something seem like a joke so they don't have to deal with it. He goes, "Come on, Jolene. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic. That word. You know what's funny? When you spend 5 years quietly handing over money and never complaining, nobody calls you anything. But the one single time you say no, you're dramatic. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just looked at him and said, "Dad, I'm not being dramatic. I just can't keep doing this." And then I looked around the table at everyone, Priscilla, Douglas, Uncle Keith, all of them, and I said, "Everyone here is an adult. Everyone here ordered their own food. So everyone here can figure out how to pay for it." And I got up and I left. Can you imagine the walk from that table to the front door? Because let me tell you, it was the longest 30 feet of my life. My legs felt like jelly. My hands were still shaking. Part of me wanted to turn around and say I was kidding and just pay the stupid bill and keep the peace like I always did. That voice in my head was loud, you know? That people-pleasing voice that says, "Just absorb it, Jolene, it's easier." But I kept walking. I walked right out the front door into the parking lot, got in my car and just sat there. Engine off. Hands on the steering wheel. Staring at nothing. And then I cried. Not the pretty kind. The ugly, gasping, mascara everywhere kind. Because standing up for yourself doesn't feel powerful in the moment. Feels terrifying. Nobody tells you that part. I sat in that parking lot for maybe 15 minutes. And then my phone started blowing up. First text from Priscilla. "Are you serious right now?" Second text, also Priscilla. "Dad is humiliated. I hope you're happy." Third text, Douglas. Douglas, of all people. "Real classy, Jolene. Real classy." From the man who hasn't held a steady job since Obama's second term. I almost laughed. Then my dad called. I didn't answer. He called again. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail that I listened to the next morning. All it said was, "I don't know what's gotten into you, but you embarrassed this family tonight. We'll talk about this later." Embarrassed this family. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Did we do something wrong?" I embarrassed them. Me. The one who's been funding their lives for half a decade. Do you see how that works? Do you see how twisted that is? The person who finally says, "Enough," becomes the villain. And the people who've been taking and taking and taking, they're the victims. It's wild. It is genuinely wild. I drove home that night and didn't sleep. Not a single minute. I just lay in bed replaying everything. Every dinner I'd paid for. Every bill I'd covered. Every time someone said, "Jolene will handle it," like it was a given. And I started doing something I hadn't done before. I got angry. Not sad. Not guilty. Angry. And honestly, that felt like progress. The next morning, Sunday, I did something I maybe should have done years ago. I called my grandmother. My mama's mother. Grandma Ruthie. She's 81, lives alone in a little house out in Gastonia, still gardens every single day, and is the sharpest person I've ever known. When Mama died, Grandma Ruthie was the one who held me together. She's tiny, maybe 5'2", but that woman has a spine made of iron. I told her everything. The dinner, the check, what Dad said, what Douglas said, the text. All of it. And she was quiet for a long time, which scared me because Grandma Ruthie is never quiet. Then she said, "Baby, I've been waiting for this call for 3 years. 3 years. She'd been watching this happen. He knew. And she'd been waiting for me to wake up. She told me something I'll never forget. She said, your mama would have flipped that table, not just the check. You were too patient, not too dramatic. There's a difference." I swear I almost started crying again right there. She asked me what I wanted to do next, and I told her honestly, I didn't know. I didn't want to lose my family. But I couldn't go back to being the wallet. And she said, then don't. Let them sit in it. Let them feel what it's like when the well runs dry. So that's exactly what I did. The next week I didn't call anyone. Didn't text. Nothing. You want to know how many of them reached out to me during that week? Go ahead, guess. Oh wait. 0. Not 1. Actually wait, that's not true. Priscilla texted me on Thursday. You know what it said? Hey, Wyatt's got a field trip next week and they need $40 for the bus fee. Can you Venmo me? I'm not making this up. 4 days after I walked out of that restaurant, my sister texted me asking for money. Not, hey, are you okay? Not, I think we should talk. $40 for a bus fee. Like nothing happened. Like the whole dinner was just a weird little hiccup and we were back to normal programming. What would you have done? Honestly, tell me. Because I stared at that text for a solid 5 minutes. I didn't respond. First time in my life I left Priscilla on read. And it felt awful and freeing at the same time, if that makes any sense. By the following week, the family narrative had fully formed without me. And this is the part that really gets me, so listen close. My dad had apparently told Uncle Keith and Aunt Luann that I'd had some kind of episode at the restaurant. An episode. Like I was unstable. Like I needed help. And Uncle Keith told Brantley, and Brantley's girlfriend Tiffany, who again I'd met one time for 90 minutes, was apparently telling people that I stormed out and made a scene. I made a scene? I literally stood up, spoke at normal volume and walked out the door. That's a scene now? The story had been completely rewritten. In their version, I wasn't someone who'd finally set a boundary. I was the ungrateful daughter who ruined a nice family dinner. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that Priscilla was feeding it. My own sister. She was telling people I'd been difficult lately, and that she was worried about me. Worried. About me. Not worried enough to pay me back $3,000, but sure worried. About 2 weeks after the dinner, I got a call from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. He was calmer this time. Not apologetic. Let me be very clear, not apologetic, but calmer. He said he wanted to come by my apartment and talk. Just the two of us. I said okay. He showed up that Saturday afternoon. Sat on my couch. I made him coffee because even when I'm furious with my father, I still make him coffee because that's how he raised me, which is ironic if you think about it. And he started with, Jolene, I think you overreacted at dinner. I just let him talk. Grandma Ruthie told me to do that. Let him say his piece first. Then you say yours. He went on about how he didn't mean to hurt my feelings, how it was just a joke, how family is supposed to help each other, how I make more money than everyone else so it only makes sense that I contribute more. He said Priscilla and Douglas are struggling and I should be more understanding. He said Uncle Keith thought it was rude. He said a lot of things. And when he was done, I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and I showed him a number. $47,216. That's how much I've given this family in the last 5 years, Dad. He looked at the screen, looked at me, looked back at the screen. That's not, he started. It is, I said. I went through every single transaction. Every Venmo, every Zelle, every cash withdrawal. $47,000. And do you know how many times anyone in this family has asked me if I'm okay? If I need anything? If I'm doing all right? He didn't answer. 0 debt. The answer is 0. He sat there for a long time. And I could see it on his face. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say I was exaggerating or being dramatic again. But the number was right there on the screen. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't have an attitude. Numbers just sit there and tell the truth. He left about 20 minutes later. Didn't say much. Just, I hear you, and let me think about this. Which, coming from Russell, was actually a lot. My father is not a man who says, let me think about this. He's a man who tells you how it is and expects you to fall in line. Something shifted that day. I could feel it. Not a fix, not even close to a fix, but a crack in the wall. A tiny crack that let a little bit of light in. But here's the thing, Priscilla and Douglas? They weren't done. Not by a long shot. Because about a week after my dad's visit, Priscilla pulled something that almost made me lose it completely. And it involved my niece Harper, which is exactly why it hurt as much as it did. You want to know what she did? Oh, trust me, you want to know. Because when I tell you, you're going to understand exactly why what happened next had to happen. So Priscilla. My dear sweet older sister Priscilla. The one who's been worried about me. The one who told the whole family I had an episode. That Priscilla. Let me tell you what she did. About a week and a half after my dad came to my apartment, I got a FaceTime call from Harper. My 8-year-old niece. And I picked up immediately because it's Harper and I will always pick up for that kid. She's sitting on her bed, hair in a messy ponytail, and she looks like she's been crying. And she says, "Aunt Jolene, how come you don't love us anymore?" My entire heart just dropped into my stomach. I said, "Baby, what are you talking about? Of course I love you." And she goes, "Mama said you don't want to be part of our family anymore. She said you're mad at us and that's why you won't help with my dance class." Dance class. Priscilla had signed Harper up for dance classes that she couldn't afford and then told her 8-year-old daughter that the reason she couldn't go was because Aunt Jolene didn't love them anymore. Are you hearing this? She used her child. She used that little girl as a weapon against me. And I swear to you, in that moment I understood rage in a way I never had before. Not the hot, explosive kind. The cold kind. The quiet kind that sits in your chest and doesn't move. I spent 20 minutes on FaceTime with Harper telling her I loved her, that none of this was about her, that sometimes grown-ups have disagreements but it doesn't mean anyone stops loving anyone. And Harper seemed okay by the end. She showed me her stuffed animals and told me about a boy in her class named Micah who ate a crayon. Kids bounce back fast. But I didn't bounce back. Not from that. I called Priscilla the second I hung up with Harper. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. So I texted her. I said, "What you told Harper is disgusting and you know it. Don't ever use your daughter to guilt me into giving you money. Ever." She responded 2 hours later. You know what she said? "Maybe if you acted like family, I wouldn't have to explain your behavior to my kids." I screenshot that text. Saved it. Because I knew I might need it later. And guess what I did? Now here's where Grandma Ruthie comes back in. Because I called her that night, shaking, furious, barely able to get the words out. And Grandma Ruthie, bless this woman, she didn't just comfort me. She got strategic. She said, "Jolene, your sister did that because the money stopped and she's panicking. People do ugly things when they lose something they feel entitled to. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to stop reacting and start planning. You hear me?" I said, "Planning what?" She said, "Thanksgiving is in 6 weeks. Your father hosts every year. Everyone will be there. That's your moment." I didn't totally understand what she meant yet. But I trusted her. Grandma Ruthie has never steered me wrong. So I said okay. For the next 6 weeks I went quiet. Completely quiet. I didn't reach out to my dad. Didn't call Priscilla. Didn't text Douglas. I focused on work. I started therapy. Yeah, I finally did that, should have done it years ago. And I started rebuilding my savings. Do you know how much money you save when you stop funding other people's lives? A lot. A whole lot. It was almost embarrassing how fast my bank account grew. But during those 6 weeks something interesting happened. My dad started calling me. Not a lot. Once a week maybe. Short calls. He'd ask how work was going. Tell me about something he saw on TV. Small talk mostly. But he was calling. He hadn't done that in years. Usually I was the one who called him. Usually I was the one who initiated everything. And one night about 3 weeks before Thanksgiving he said something that caught me off guard. He said, "Jolene, I've been thinking about that number you showed me." I waited. I didn't realize it was that much. I really didn't. That's all he said. But from my dad, that was enormous. That was practically a Hallmark movie moment by Russell standards. Now Priscilla. During those same 6 weeks. Not a single call. Not one. But I heard through Grandma Ruthie that things weren't great at her house. Douglas had lost another freelance gig. They were behind on their car payment. And Priscilla was apparently telling people that I was punishing her. Punishing. Not paying someone else's bills isn't punishment. It's just not paying someone else's bills. But in her mind, me keeping my own money was an act of cruelty. Can you even wrap your head around that logic? Because I've tried and I still can't. So Thanksgiving comes. My dad's house. He lives in this 3-bedroom ranch out in Mint Hill. Same house I grew up in, same house where my mama used to make sweet potato pie every November. Walking through that front door was hard. It always is. Her photos are still on the wall in the hallway. Her apron still hangs in the kitchen. My dad never moved any of it. Everyone was there. Dad, Priscilla, Douglas, the kids, Uncle Keith, Aunt Luann, Brantley. No Tiffany with an I this time, apparently they broke up, shocking absolutely no one, and Grandma Ruthie. who drove herself 45 minutes from Gastonia because, and I quote, I wouldn't miss this for anything. The first hour was tense. Priscilla barely looked at me. Douglas avoided me entirely. My dad was trying to act normal but kept hovering, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. The kids were the only ones acting like actual human beings. Harper ran up and hugged me the second I walked in. Wyatt showed me a turkey he'd made out of construction paper at school. Kids, man. They don't carry grudges. We could all learn something from that. Dinner was at 4. We all sat down at the table. My mama's table, the big oak one she found at an estate sale in 2008. And my dad said grace, which he only does on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then we started eating. And for a little while it almost felt normal. Almost. Then about halfway through dinner, Uncle Keith, who apparently cannot read a room to save his life, said, So Jolene, you still being stingy or what? And he laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Nobody else laughed. Not even Douglas. Which tells you something. And before I could respond, my dad spoke up. My dad. Russell. The man who slid a $2,000 check across the table to me 2 months earlier. He said, Keith, that's enough. Just that. Quiet. Firm. Keith, that's enough. Uncle Keith looked stunned. Aunt Luann suddenly got very interested in her cranberry sauce. And I looked at my dad and he looked at me and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. I think it was shame. Not the performative kind. The real kind. The kind that means something actually landed. After dinner, when the kids were in the living room watching a movie and most of the adults were cleaning up, Grandma Ruthie made her move. She asked everyone to sit back down at the table. She said she had something to say. Now when Grandma Ruthie asks you to sit down, you sit down. I don't care who you are. This woman raised 4 kids on a factory worker's salary, buried a husband and a daughter, and still gets up every morning to tend her garden. You sit down and you listen. She looked around the table and she said, I've been watching this family fall apart for 2 years and I'm too old to watch it any longer. So we're going to talk. Right now. Then she looked at me and said, Jolene, tell them what you told me. So I did. Everything. I told them about the $47,000. I told them about the bank statements. I told them about every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. I told them about the car I slept in. I told them about the medical bills I'd been dealing with alone. I told them about Harper's FaceTime call and what Priscilla had told her. Priscilla's face went white when I brought that up. Because she knew, that was the one thing she couldn't justify. And then Grandma Ruthie said something to Priscilla that I will carry with me forever. She said, Priscilla Ann, your mother would be heartbroken. Not because you needed help. Because you forgot to say thank you. Priscilla started crying. Not the manipulative kind she's good at. Real tears. The ugly kind. The kind I cried alone in that parking lot outside Monarch 2 months earlier. And Douglas, and this genuinely surprised me, Douglas spoke up. He said, I know I owe you, Jolene. I've known for a while. I just didn't know how to say it. Was it enough? Well, was it a start? Yeah, it was a start. My dad was the last one to speak. He sat at the head of that table in the same chair he's sat in my whole life and he said, I failed you, Jolene. I put a weight on you that wasn't yours to carry. And I told myself it was okay because you could handle it. But that wasn't fair. Your mama would have told me that. She probably did tell me that and I just wasn't listening. Do you know how long I waited to hear that? Do you have any idea what it's like to wait years, for your father to see you as a person and not a provider? I cried. Of course I cried. Everyone cried. Even Uncle Keith, who I'm pretty sure was crying mostly because Grandma Ruthie terrifies him, but still. That Thanksgiving didn't fix everything overnight. I want to be honest with you about that. Priscilla and I didn't hug it out and become best friends. Douglas didn't magically pay me back $3,000 the next morning. Uncle Keith is still kind of clueless. Some things take time. But here's what did change. My dad started calling me every Sunday. Not to ask for anything. Just to talk. He told me stories about my mom I'd never heard. He asked me about my job, actually asked and actually listened. He told me he was proud of me. Not because of my salary. Because of who I am. Priscilla came to my apartment about 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. She sat on my couch, same spot Dad had sat in, and she said, I'm sorry about Harper. That was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it and I did it anyway and I'm sorry. And then she said something that surprised me. She said, I've been jealous of you for a long time, Jolene. Not just the money. Everything. You figured your life out and I didn't, and instead of dealing with that I just took from you. And I told myself you owed it to me because you're my sister. But you didn't owe me anything. I won't pretend that erased 5 years of resentment. But it opened a door. A real door, not a fake one. Douglas got a steady job in January. Warehouse supervisor, nothing glamorous but consistent. He started paying me back $50 a month. Is it going to take 5 years to pay off $3,000? Yeah. But he's doing it. Every month. Without me asking. Me. I kept going to therapy. I kept saving. I set boundaries and I kept them. And for the first time in years when my phone rings and it's family, I don't feel a knot in my stomach. Last month my dad invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. A little barbecue place near his house, nothing fancy. And when the check came he picked it up before I could even reach for it. He looked at me with this little half smile and said, "I got this one, career woman." And I laughed. A real one this time. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you my family is perfect now. We're not. We're loud and messy and we still get on each other's nerves. Priscilla still borrows my clothes without asking. Douglas still talks too much about his truck. Uncle Keith still can't read a room. But we're trying. All of us. And trying counts for something. Grandma Ruthie told me something recently that I think about a lot. She said, family isn't the people who never hurt you. It's the people who learn how to stop. I think she's right. So that's my story. That's the restaurant and the check and the parking lot tears and the silent weeks and the Thanksgiving that changed everything. It's not a fairy tale. It's just real life with real people who messed up and then tried to do better. If you made it this far, first of all, thank you. Seriously. It means more than you know that you'd sit here and listen to all of that. If this story resonated with you or if you've been through something similar, I'd really love to hear about it. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me if you think I handled it right or if you would have done something different. I genuinely want to know. And if you enjoyed this, hit that like button so more people can find it. Something didn't land right or you see it differently, share that too. I'm not here for just the praise, I want the real conversations. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you're the Jolene in your family right now, the one carrying everyone, the one who hasn't said no yet, just know it's okay to put the check down. It really is. Take care of yourselves. I mean that.